Okay, so here we are. So Glenn, as the missions elder, why don't you tell us, give us a brief overview about the trip?
Trip was awesome. Third time in 3 years that we've gone to Tanzania to join with the Safwa pastors who are reaching out in a mission to the Bungu tribes neighboring them. And what was cool about it is that half of our team, we had a team of 6 from Hillcrest, half of the team had been to Tanzania before and involved in this and knew what to expect. Likewise, there were 5 Safwa pastors who had been previously to the Bungu tribes, and then there were a couple of new Bungu pastors who joined us as well. And so we were able to quickly hit the ground running after 4 days of travel, and we spent 6 days telling stories, going from home to home in villages, sharing our testimony, telling Bible stories, and leading a number of people to Christ.
So tell me a story. What was a story that really was cool for you while you were over there?
Oh, there were a ton of stories, but well, first, just the power of prayer. We knew that there were literally hundreds of people praying for us, and as we were traveling over there, after 2 days of flying, we drove across the country and found ourselves in the middle of a brush fire raging. And realized that we could expire, and it was only through the prayers of the saints, I'm convinced, that we made it on to our destination and were able to finish the trip. But I know you've got a lot of stories too.
Well, I'm glad we did not expire in the fire.
And my flesh cry out for the living God.
Well, one cool story for me was we had talked to these 2 brothers one day. One was a Muslim and one was non-religious. They were carpenters. And, after a few stories, they were really interested in what we were telling them, but they had to keep working, and they said, well, could you come back tomorrow? And we said, yeah, sure. So next day we were walking down the road. We've been talking to other people, and they see us, and they start waving us over, and they say, oh, come here. We've been thinking about all these stories you're telling us, and we were talking to our neighbors, and we know you talked to them as well, and we're really excited. We've never heard this kind of teaching. Would you tell us some more stories today? I said, sure. We'd love to. They said, come around back to our shop. So we sit down on the ground with them, and we start telling them some more stories. And after a while of the sophomore missionary telling stories, and Karen Lehman telling stories, and I've been telling some stories, they're really interested in Karen. Karen looks at me and says, I think you should tell the story of the prodigal son. And I said, okay, sure. I mean, it actually wasn't on my list of memorized stories, but I just knew that story. So I started telling this story of the prodigal son. They'd heard about Jesus, and this was our way of kind of explaining, what it is that he came to do. And they just got it intuitively. I looked over at the Muslim guy, and he just had tears in his eyes. It just made sense to him. And the other guy looked to me at the end of the story and said, I've heard that story before, and I know you're telling the truth because it's the same as I've heard before. And to me, that was just a conviction of the Holy Spirit telling him what you're hearing is the truth of God. And these guys ended up becoming believers and disciples of God, and they actually ended up starting a church. They just were like, how do we keep doing this? And so they started a church with their friends, and they know that the Safwas are going to continue to come back monthly or so. Okay, so last thing here. Well, what about what did God do in your life personally, coming home from that? What's one thing that you've kind of brought away from this trip?
What I brought away, the biggest thing was just the power of my story, of God in my life. Just sharing my story with people from half a world away could have an impact that would change their lives for eternity. It made me realize that the story God gave me is powerful, and I need to be more willing to share it with people that are right next door to me, as well as people half a world away.
Might always feel the Lord your God, He did this, so